Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Chloe if you're new here, and this channel is Girl Like Me with Chloe M. So I have had a lot of people request videos about transitioning during school. I've had people ask me, what it was like to transition during nursing school, what was it like to transition during college. So today's topic is transitioning during school. I'm going to include some links down below for those of you who are just starting to transition, those of you who are in high school and transitioning, those of you who are parents watching and have a child who is transitioning or going through that kind of self-identification process of trying to figure out what their gender is or how they want to present in life. So I will leave all of those resources down there. I will say, one of the #1 resources that I cannot recommend enough, if you are down, if you are depressed, if you're feeling suicidal, if you have a plan to commit, harm against yourself, any of these things, there's a resource out there called the Trans Lifeline. It is a 24/7 hotline for trans people, queer people, gender non-conforming people who are going through a tough time, who feel like they don't have someone they can talk to, who are feeling suicidal, who are feeling depressed, who are feeling like they want to self-harm. If you do anything, call the Trans Lifeline. Their number is 877-565-8860. They are trained. They are well versed in things that we go through. They are there as a resource whenever you need it. So please, if you're feeling down, call the Trans Lifeline. That's 877-565-8860. And if you're watching for someone who's a friend who's transitioning, or you're watching for, your family member who's transitioning or in that self-identification process right now, give them that number. Have that number on your phone so that if you're with them and they're feeling down, or you're with them and they're feeling suicidal or depressed or like they're wanting to self-harm, that you can call and be on speakerphone with them and be an advocate, but let someone who is experienced and versed in those things take care of that. So, really, really great resource. I'll leave more resources down in the comment bar. Resources for legal, trans scholarships, resources for parents or siblings or guardians of people who are queer or transitioning, non-binary, in that self-identifying process. So if you're looking for resources, I will leave those below. So for those of you who don't know my story, I am a trans woman, and I started transitioning when I was in my 2nd year of nursing school, which was, fairly difficult, as most transitions are. So when I first came out, my first year of nursing school, I was in Rochester, Minnesota at the U of M. And I decided to transfer to Minneapolis at the U of M because it's the same program, just different campuses. And so I made the decision that the summer before I was going to start my classes in Minneapolis, that I was going to transition. You can start transitioning whenever you want, but for me, when I was in school, I feel like the best time to transition is during a break or during summer, or during winter break, because you can make that announcement. Everyone can see it on your social, on whatever. If you think it's important to tell your classmates, tell your classmates. And then once you come back, people are prepped, they're primed, they know that you're going through a transition, and you may have had the chance during that break to start presenting female, to start doing your makeup, to start wearing wigs, or doing your hair a certain way, or whatever you want as far as your transition goals. So I always think that a break in the school year is a really good time to start transitioning. Next point is transitioning around people that can be really tough. So one thing that I did is just reintroduce myself. I know that can be kind of odd or funny sounding, but going up to people and saying, "Hi, my name's Chloe. My pronouns are she and her. it's nice to meet you again. Something to the extent of that. And I did that with my professors as well. So if I had my professors, you know, the year or the semester before and I was going to have them again, I would send them an email saying, hi, you may have known me previously as this. My name is now this. These are my pronouns. I'm going through a transition. I thought it would be important for you to know so that they don't misgender you in class, so that they don't call you the wrong name in class, so they don't use the wrong pronouns with you. And I think that sets you up for success, you know, in your classes moving forward. That being said, all of these things can be difficult if you're living somewhere, you know, that is not as supportive as Minnesota. Minnesota is a pretty progressive place, so I got away with doing that, and people, you know, for the most part responded well. It's important for you to start transitioning safely. So always consider your safety, always consider your well-being. If you feel like transitioning is going to put your life at risk in the situation you're in, and you have the means to go elsewhere or to, you know, transfer to a different school that is more, you know, accepting or in a more accepting state, that's what I would recommend. Not all of us have that option. And so for me, when I was living in Texas and the South is not as progressive or as accepting of people who are different. So when I was a more feminine person in high school and middle school, people were not very nice to me. I got made fun of a lot, and that, you know, of course, throws you into can throw you into depression, anxiety. You know, I had major dysphoria growing up or surrounding my gender and my presentation. So please just keep in mind your safety and your well-being are the most important. If you find that kind of reintroduction of yourself to people is helpful, it was really helpful to me. So I started on a new campus, so a lot of people knew me because we had teleconferencing for classrooms, so they knew my voice, they knew me from like the video, but they didn't necessarily know, you know, me in person. So I just reintroduced myself to everyone. Another thing is when you are transitioning in college, there are people who may not be your friend anymore. And that's a process that sucks a lot, but there are people who are going to embrace you wholeheartedly and to support you through your journey the best way they know how. So, you know, part of transitioning during school is you're in different social groups, and some people in those social groups may not support your transition. They may, you know, feel like aligning themselves with you means something about them. So just really take this time to be kind to yourself, not to beat yourself up if people aren't willing to support you in your journey, because if they're not willing to support you in your journey, they're not worth it at all. I had one of my really, really good guy friends who was really close with me during my whole kind of college experience down in Rochester. As soon as I started transitioning, he completely ghosted me and stopped talking to me. So, and I was devastated because he was one of my best friends. And he doesn't really talk to me to this day. So something to, you know, keep in mind is you have to be kind to yourself. It's never about you or your transition. It's about them and the way that they're reacting to it. So keep on with your journey, keep on becoming yourself, and be kind to yourself. You know, after kind of accepting the fact that your friend groups may change, your support system may change, I think it's really important to find like-minded people or people who are going through the same thing on your campus or in your school. So if you're in high school, if you have like an LGBT group or a gay straight alliance or something in that realm where you have a group of like-minded people who are going through the same or similar things, just to be able to go to a place and say like, I'm going through this, does anyone else understand how I'm feeling? Same thing if you're in college. I think often there are like LGBT groups. At the U of M, University of Minnesota, there was a LGBT group, but there was also just like a trans, queer, like gender non-specific group. So it was fun to be able to hang out with people who know exactly what you're going through and who can help you through the process if they've been through it already or are more experienced. And it really opens your eyes to the realm of possibilities of what is out there, who is out there, and what you can aspire to be or do. So find a support group. Of course, be friends with everyone you want to be. They don't have to be LGBT, they don't have to be whatever. But I think having friends who are specifically kind of in that similar situation or know of people in that similar situation are really helpful. So that I think is a space where you can just be yourself, explore what your journey can look like, and have someone there to back you up. I think the next step beyond finding that support network is finding if you can legally change your name, if you can change your name within your school system, and looking for, specifically talking about college, mentorship programs or scholarships that are trans, LGBT, non-binary specific. So for me, I had a fantastic friend, Faith, who I met through performing drag. She is my trans mother. She walked me through the name change process. She took me to the courthouse. She made me do it. And so she gave me that push that I was able to change my name and just have another thing under my belt done. And so then once my name was changed, I went to the university system and I had them change it in the system. So that was really great. So when you're going through that legal process, it can be so confusing. Where do I go? How do I start that process? Is there a specific courthouse I go? Do I need an attorney? What forms do I have to sign? So a really fantastic resource for those of you who are exploring the idea of legally changing your name or your gender or anything like that on your license, your social security card, birth certificate, depending on what state you live in, is Lambda Legal. They are a kind of legal company, a group of attorneys and other people in the law profession who specifically work with LGBT people and focus on LGBT issues like name changes. So if you don't have a Faith in your life, someone who can push you to change your name, who's been through it once before, Lambda Legal is actually a really, really great resource for you. So I would recommend checking out the Lambda Legal website. I've left that in the description box down below. Outside of kind of the legality of name changes and that process, another thing I would recommend is getting in touch with a counselor. So I know that in high school there's counselors that you can go to and talk about kind of your issues. So I would go and establish a relationship with your counselor if you're going through your transition during high school or middle school. And then for those of you who are in college, you have advisors who are kind of watching over you and your program and are there to kind of help you through the academic part of it. But you can also use them as resources, typically because those advisors are really well versed in what the university or college you go to offers. So establish a great relationship with your advisor because they can kind of point you out to resources. And if your school has a counselor program, or if they have doctoral students who are working on their Psych D or their therapy degrees and can have free clinics to provide therapy, I think those are really, really great resources. So just making sure that you are healthy mentally during your transition is extremely important. Another thing to consider, especially when you're in college, is housing. So being in housing that is inclusive and safe for trans people. So like I said earlier, establishing a support group of like-minded people or people who are going through the same situation is very important. And that opens the opportunity of having roommates who are going through a similar situation and who are supportive of your transition. The last thing you want to do is be in a frat or something and then go through a transition and then have someone, who doesn't agree with it be on you every day about how they don't agree with it, or even worse, harassing you, or in one case, when I was, I never lived on campus, which thank God. But when my brother was living, my brother went to the University of Minnesota too, and he's gay. He is queer, kind of identifies kind of fluidly. But when he was living in the dorm rooms, one of the basketball players was kind of in the same area, and he would harass my brother consistently. He would like make a ton of noise. He peed on his door. Like, it was just bad. So the last thing you want when you're going through such a difficult time and trying to focus on studying and becoming who you're becoming academically and focusing on a profession is to focus on being harassed as well. So as a trans person, I think we all come to expect a little bit of resistance from people in society. It's just kind of a part of it. Not everyone's gonna agree with us because that's just the nature of people. They don't agree with things that they don't necessarily understand. But to have something go further towards harassment or kind of a daily, attack on your identity, it's tough. So again, kind of creating that safety net or that bubble around you to be able to give you support when it's one of the hardest times of your life, transition and going through school, because you need to focus on learning, but you also need to focus on becoming who you are. So finding roommates who are like-minded or who support you, or finding I know that a lot of campuses now are starting to have fraternities or sororities or just like that kind of thing for LGBT people, for gay people, for any group of people that kind of associate. So look for those resources. There's also housing resources and many, many other resources on the National Center for Transgender Equality. They have a ton of resources for housing, healthcare, mental health, hotlines, similar to the Trans Lifeline, nutrition, employment, support, and many, many ways. So again, I'll leave that down below. Another thing is employment during college. I think that can be really, really tough. Or even high school and going through a transition. So again, being employed in the public sector, I worked as a barista for a really, really long time, for about 5 years. And I started my transition as a barista. So you're presenting, female, and you're just beginning your transition, and I'm speaking for me specifically. And you're interacting with people all the time. Something is bound to happen. So finding an employer that is supportive of transition or LGBT people and will have your back if you need them to. So in one instance, when I was working as a barista, I had one customer who just kept misgendering me, who was very put off that they would even hire a trans person. And my boss stepped in and said, you're inappropriate, we're gonna get you your order, but that's the last time I want you to come here. So again, finding places where you can have that one support person is really important. And having a job during your transition, very important. If you have the ability to not work, great. A lot of us don't have that ability, especially during college. So I worked all through college because I needed to make money and I was going through a transition. So I had to get a completely new wardrobe. I had to get undergarments that I had never bought before, bras, panties, I had to learn how to tuck. I had to get makeup. I had to get hair stuff. I had to go through this whole transformation process, and that cost money. And then I had bills, and I had medications, and I had doctor's visits and therapist visits. So make sure that you are balancing your life while you're in school and it's so hard to balance because school is just tough, especially if you're in a really tough program like nursing, which I was. It's just a lot of work. But finding a workplace that not only pays you a living wage but is supportive of you is a really great thing to try to do. Again, I know that is not always conducive to everywhere in the United States or elsewhere. So again, just researching about where you want to go to college and taking all of these things into consideration of where would be a supportive place to live? Where is a place where, trans people probably are more likely to be supported? and then kind of picking schools based off of that. Again, I'm speaking from a place that I know. I know it's a lot harder for people who, don't have enough money to go to school or are limited in where they can travel because their family's supporting them. So again, I'll leave resources down below to help, with scholarship information, mentorship information. But as far as, getting through school, transitioning, you just really have to try your best, and that's all you can do. One thing that I tried to do as the only trans person in my class was to be an advocate for trans people. This being said, you don't need to be the token if you don't want to be, but I chose that role. So in nursing school, we really don't go through LGBT health as a learning point. As people who are going into the healthcare industry, we really don't learn a lot about LGBTQ health in specific and the specific needs of that community. So I tried to be the voice of that, LGBT standpoint in healthcare and the specific needs that we had. So if there are ways that you feel like you can be a voice or an advocate for the people that you are involved with or people who are like you, I think that's great. I think that, being that way, of course, some people are not gonna like that. I did get pushback from patients and professors for being, trans and being kind of an advocate for trans people during school. But at the end of the day, it made me feel good, and it helped me kind of reassure what I was doing, and it helped me reassure my career choice, being nursing, because not only did I go through the healthcare system to start my transition physically, I now knew firsthand from my transition, but from research I did as a nurse on LGBT health, on how to care for people who are so often left behind in the healthcare system. So do research, try to be an advocate in any way that you can. And I think that that will fill your cup, or make you feel good about, not only your transition, but possibly helping other people or enlightening other people, so that in the future, when maybe a classmate who wasn't necessarily the most supportive in the beginning meets another trans person, they can be like, oh, I've met a trans person before. They were really awesome. They really advocated for, trans people in general. So I feel like I'm, I know a little bit more about trans people, and it was great to, meet another person who identifies that way. So just, being a role model, I think, is important, especially when you're in school. For those of you who are parents or siblings or roommates or any support system for people who are going through transition or kind of that self-identifying process, I'll leave some resources down in the description box as well for things like PFLAG or the It Gets Better project. I think there are a lot of resources on there about how to be a better ally, and just taking the research and looking things up into your own hands. I think sometimes what people fail to recognize is that if they are, let's say for instance, a lot of people will ask me really, really inappropriate questions because they think that I want to educate them on everything about being a trans person. But I think it's really important as people who are not, identifying as trans or LGBTQ, for you to take the research into your own hands. The internet is a plethora of knowledge, and there are so many resources out there for you to read and go through and watch, and videos on YouTube for you to watch and learn from before you ask someone what their genitalia is. Before you ask someone if they're trans, what does that mean about their sexuality, or what do they consider themselves? I think there are so many resources out there for you to educate yourself on, what someone in the LGBT, group is, and then being able to come to a conversation with someone like me and say and ask, questions that are not as probing, like, tell me about yourself. Like, how do you identify? Like, is there anything you would like, you know, someone who is a cisgender male to know about trans people? And like starting a conversation with that backup knowledge in your head, and knowing that, like, don't start every conversation about genitalia, don't start conversations about sex, don't start conversations about sexuality just because you're confused. Like, take that research part into your own hands and use that to support the people in your life who are going through those difficult times like transition. I'm gonna include some links down below for those of you who are just starting to transition, those of you who are in high school and transitioning, those of you who are parents watching and have a child who is transitioning or going through that kind of self-identification process of trying to figure out what their gender is or how they want to present in life. So I will leave all of those resources down there. I will say, one of the #1 resources that I cannot recommend enough, if you are down, if you are depressed, if you're feeling suicidal, if you have a plan to commit, you know, harm against yourself, any of these things, there's a resource out there called the Trans Lifeline. It is a 24/7 hotline for trans people, queer people, you know, gender non-conforming people who are going through a tough time, who feel like they don't have someone they can talk to, who are feeling suicidal, who are feeling depressed, who are feeling like they want to self-harm. If you do anything, call the Trans Lifeline. Their number is 877-565-8860. They are trained. They are well versed in things that we go through. They are there as a resource whenever you need it. So please, if you're feeling down, call the Trans Lifeline. That's 877-565-8860. And if you're watching for someone who's a friend who's transitioning, or you're watching for, you know, your family member who's transitioning or in that self-identification process right now, give them that number. Have that number on your phone so that if you're with them and they're feeling down, or you're with them and they're feeling suicidal or depressed or like they're wanting to self-harm, that you can call and be on speakerphone with them and be an advocate, but let someone who is experienced and versed in those things take care of that. So, really, really great resource. I'll leave more resources down in the comment bar. Resources for like legal, trans scholarships, resources for parents or siblings or guardians of people who are queer or transitioning, non-binary in that self-identifying process. So if you're looking for resources, I will leave those below. So for those of you who are transitioning, who are gender non-conforming, who kind of fall within that LGBTQ umbrella and are going through that change in your life during a school, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that the resources I'm leaving below are helpful. If they are, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, a like, and share this with anyone who you believe could use this as a resource. I will say YouTube had been a fantastic resource for me during my transition. People like Julie Vu, people like Meyer, people like Isley, I forgot her last name, Reset, I think, Isley, I-S-L-E-Y. But people who have documented their journeys. I think YouTube is a fabulous place to be able to learn from people who have already gone through transition. So as I mentioned before, finding people who are like-minded or who are versed in transition is really, really helpful. And if you don't have that, YouTube is here. YouTube is full of people who have gone through transition and who can answer questions. So use YouTube as a resource as well, and I hope all the resources that I listed below are helpful too. So thank you all for watching, and I really, really hope that you stay tuned. If you guys like my makeup, I am actually going to be posting this look on, what is today? Tuesday the 7th? So I'll be posting this look on Friday. So it's great to see all of you, and I hope that everyone is happy, healthy, and staying in social isolation during this crazy time. So with that being said, bye!